Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and find the critical insights inside. Today, we're tackling one of the most persistent and intriguing questions in history. It takes us from the depths of ancient engineering all the way to the stars. And the question is this: what if the most astonishing human achievements, those megalithic structures that seem to defy, all ancient logistics, weren't achieved by human ingenuity alone?
It is a fantastic intellectual puzzle, and we're not just here to dismiss the sensationalist claims out of hand. We're here to weigh them against the very best, most meticulous engineering and archaeological science available.
So we're looking at both sides of the coin.
Exactly. We're diving into a fascinating collection of source material that explores the claims of ancient astronauts and lost civilizations. But we are equally committed to going deep into the cutting-edge scientific and engineering explanations for sites like, well, the Great Pyramids.
Our mission, then, is to unpack these competing narratives. On one hand, you have the pseudo-archaeology that suggests extraterrestrial intervention. And on the other, the advanced archaeological theories that reveal just astonishing human ingenuity. We want to see what undeniable facts emerge about ancient capabilities, regardless of who or what was responsible. This dive is less about believing one theory over another and more about, dissecting the evidence for both sides.
This is truly a topic ripe for aha moments. Because when you look closely at the proposed human solutions, the ramps, the material science, the hydraulics, they often involve an understanding of physics and logistics. That is, it's far more mind-blowing than simply saying aliens did it.
Okay, so we have a lot to get through.
We do. We'll be looking at new ramp discoveries, controversial concrete theories, and the physical mechanics that might be waiting inside Khufu's pyramid right now. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's begin by defining the central headline-grabbing claim that, it really permeates popular culture, the ancient astronaut theory. What is the fundamental concept that proponents like Erich von Däniken put forward?
So the central tenet is straightforward, though, pretty radical. It maintains that all or some humans are either the descendants or the direct creations of an extraterrestrial intelligence, an ETI, that visited Earth thousands of years ago.
A mother culture.
A mother culture, exactly. This ETI allegedly provided humanity with that initial spark of knowledge, the blueprints for sophisticated architecture, for religion, and the very foundations of culture itself.
And there are a few different names for this idea, right?
Yeah, proponents use various terms to describe it. You'll hear ancient aliens, ancient euphonauts, or the more academic-sounding paleo-contact or even biblical SETI.
This theory really just exploded into the global consciousness in the mid to late 20th century, and it was largely because of a few specific figures who were, they were masterful at using mass media.
Oh, absolutely. The popularization of the idea rests heavily on individuals like Erich von Däniken. His 1968 book, Chariots of the Gods, became an international sensation.
Right, that's the big one.
That's the one everyone knows. Then there's Zecharia Sitchin, famous for his extensive work on Sumerian mythology and the planet Nibiru, particularly in books like The Stairway to Heaven. These authors, alongside others like Robert K.G. Temple and, more recently, figures like Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, became mainstays on television, successfully bringing these theories to a massive global audience.
And the entire basis of their argument rests on what are known as out-of-place artifacts, or OPARTs.
Precisely. OPARTs are archaeological artifacts that proponents claim are fundamentally anachronistic.
Anachronistic how?
They suggest these objects or structures could not possibly have been created by the ancient people credited with them because they seem to require technology or knowledge that's, beyond the established historical timeline. The argument is essentially built on gaps in the documentary evidence. If mainstream archaeology can't provide a perfect day-to-day blueprint of how a site like Puma Punku or the Great Pyramid was constructed, the proponents claim that gap must be filled by external intervention.
And to be fair, it's true that when you're standing in front of the sheer, overwhelming scale of the Great Pyramid or the temples at Teotihuacan, you can't help but question the timeline and the methods. It seems like the easiest answer when you're confronted with something that feels impossible.
That feeling is understandable, but here's where we need to introduce the firm academic verdict on this. It is crucial to note that mainstream academics and archaeologists overwhelmingly identify these claims as pseudo-archaeological or just unscientific.
So no real traction in the peer-reviewed world.
The source material emphasizes that these theories receive virtually no credible attention or support in peer-reviewed scientific or archaeological studies. When proponents cite evidence, it's almost invariably found to be distorted, based on misinterpretation of ancient texts, or sometimes, outright fabricated.
And the critique extends far beyond just methodology, doesn't it? There's a serious ethical dimension concerning how these theories interact with the achievements of non-European cultures.
This is a vital and, an often uncomfortable truth highlighted by scholars. A significant critique is that these ancient astronaut and lost civilization theories often have deeply embedded racist or Eurocentric undertones.
How so?
By suggesting that non-indigenous external or extraterrestrial intervention was necessary for monumental building, especially at sites in Africa, Asia, and the Americas, it inherently diminishes the accomplishments and capabilities of the indigenous cultures themselves.
Right. When you look at the Sphinx or the massive structures in Peru, the theories immediately jump from human brilliance to external aid. But the architectural accomplishments of, say, ancient Rome are universally accepted as native human genius.
That selectivity is the core of the problem. And furthermore, the sources connect this to the broader field of pseudo-archaeology, which is often appropriated and leveraged by groups, sometimes including white nationalists, to promote hyperdiffusionist narratives.
Wait, you used a strong technical term there, hyperdiffusionist. For you listening, how does that political concept tie into what seems like an innocuous ancient alien debate?
That's a necessary clarification. So hyperdiffusionism, in its academic sense, is the idea that cultural traits spread across vast distances from a single original source, often assumed to be a lost superior culture. When it's appropriated, this concept becomes dangerous because it's used to cast doubt on the originality and achievements of Black people, indigenous peoples, and other people of color BIPOC communities around the globe. If you claim that the knowledge used to build the pyramids or the structures in Central America must have come from a superior white race that perished like white Atlanteans or Solutreans, you are, in effect, trying to rewrite history to bolster systems of white power.
Wow.
It denies the incredible, legitimate history of ingenuity that existed independently in these indigenous cultures. And although the Solutrean hypothesis that Europeans were the first settlers in North America is widely rejected by genetic and archaeological science, its appropriation by these groups just demonstrates the real-world harm embedded in rejecting the native ingenuity narrative.
It's a crucial reminder that these debates aren't just about ancient history.
Not at all. They're about whose history gets validated.
So if the premise of external intervention is often tied to these problematic narratives, let's look at the specific evidence the proponents use to justify their claims. Let's start with the reinterpretation of sacred religious texts.
This is where selective reading and modern technological metaphors truly combine to create a compelling, albeit very speculative, narrative. A prime example comes from the ancient Hindu epic, the Ramayana. Proponents seize upon the description of the Vimana, specifically the wondrous chariot named Pushpak.
Pushpak.
Yeah. The text says it was wrought by hands divine and could waftly through the fields of air, rising swift through the air as Rama chose.
I mean, it certainly sounds like a machine capable of flight.
It does if you read it with modern eyes and a modern vocabulary. To ancient astronaut believers, this is a clear, undeniable description of a complex flying machine or aircraft supplied by extraterrestrial visitors. They argue that the ancient authors simply had no other way to categorize this advanced technology except by associating it with the gods.
And the biblical equivalent, the most cited passage, has to be the vision described in the book of Ezekiel.
That's correct, Ezekiel's vision. The prophet describes 4 living creatures, but the focus for the proponents is the intricate mechanism beneath them, the wheels.
The wheels within wheels.
The wheel intersecting a wheel, exactly. He sees a wheel on the ground beside each creature. He details that the wheels were sparkling like topaz, their rims were high and awesome and full of eyes, noting that they could move in any of the 4 directions without turning.
It's the mechanical detail that really fuels the speculation, isn't it?
Absolutely. Ancient astronaut theorists interpret this mechanical, almost gear-like description, not as a divine symbolic vision, which is, the standard theological interpretation, but as an eyewitness account of an extraterrestrial landing craft or a highly advanced piece of machinery.
So they're saying the prophet was just trying his best to describe something like a complex gimbal or a locomotion system.
A system for which he lacked any adequate vocabulary. That's the core of the argument.
Okay, shifting from texts to physical sites, the Nazca lines in Peru are a global enigma often pointed to as direct evidence of alien contact.
They're the textbook OPART example. They cover over 1,000 square kilometers of the Peruvian desert.
And you can only really see them from the air.
Exactly. These massive geoglyphs, geometric shapes, animals, human figures, they're only truly visible and coherent from high above. So proponents link them directly to extraterrestrial contact, suggesting they served as flight paths, landing strips, or perhaps markers for ancient ships. The argument is, why would the ancient Nazca people create art visible only to beings in the sky?
Right. And in the same vein, you have the mystery of the Moai statues on Easter Island. These colossal figures moved miles from the Rana Raraku quarry that's frequently cited as requiring superior non-human assistance.
The difficulty of moving the Moai is just monumental. Some of these statues weigh up to 80 tons.
80 tons.
And local Rapa Nui folklore suggested that the chiefs used mana, or spiritual power, to make the statues walk themselves to their platforms. To an external observer looking at the sheer weight, this just sounded like mysticism, requiring some advanced theory to solve the logistics.
But this is where the power of modern experimentation and ingenuity comes in. We have a fantastic demonstration that solved this seemingly impossible engineering puzzle using a simple human-centric solution.
Yes, and it's one of the most elegant scientific resolutions to a pseudo-archaeological claim. In 1982, the Czech engineer Pavel led a team, and they used a replica concrete moai.
Okay.
They tested what they dubbed the refrigerator method. By tying ropes to the top of the statue and having two small teams pulling and twisting it back and forth, they successfully demonstrated that the massive statues could be moved easily by a small group of just 16 people.
So basically, they just wiggled them into place by leveraging the statue's center of gravity.
Precisely. They discovered the statue's shape was naturally conducive to a walking motion. This simple, elegant, and, low-tech engineering solution demonstrated that the Rapa Nui people, with minimal effort and great technique, could have easily moved the moai over large distances.
And it completely deflates the argument that superior non-human assistance was required.
Completely.
We must also address the hugely influential, though pseudo-scientific theories of Graham Hancock. He focuses less on extraterrestrials and more on a lost civilization.
Right. Hancock promotes the idea of a highly advanced human society that was wiped out approximately 12,900 years ago during the Younger Dryas impact event, a proposed catastrophic event involving a comet or meteorite strike.
So a sort of Atlantis narrative.
A more scientific-sounding one, yes. His theory, popularized in books like Fingerprints of the Gods, posits that survivors of this advanced global civilization spread their technology and knowledge to early emerging societies like ancient Egypt and Sumer, basically seeding known civilization.
And his theory ties directly back to the Giza Plateau through the Orion Correlation Theory, or OCT.
Correct. The OCT, which was developed by Robert Bauval and promoted by Hancock, claims that the layout of the three main pyramids at Giza precisely mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt.
Okay.
They argue this correlation aligns with the sky configuration as it would have looked in circa 10,500 BC, providing key evidence for their lost civilization timeline.
That seems like powerful evidence, especially since we know the pyramids are so meticulously aligned with the cardinal directions. But what's the professional astronomical verdict?
Mainstream astronomers reject the OCT theory quite emphatically. While it's true, the pyramids are aligned to the cardinal directions with extraordinary precision, a feat of human engineering in itself. Astronomers like Tony Farrell have pointed out that the alleged stellar alignment misses the mark by more than 5 degrees.
5 degrees might sound small, but what does that error mean in the context of celestial alignments?
In terms of astronomical mapping, a 5-degree mismatch is catastrophic. It's a huge error. The ancient Egyptians, given their ability to achieve near-perfect cardinal alignment, were certainly capable of far greater stellar precision if they had actually intended to map Orion's belt.
Interesting.
Furthermore, astronomers calculate that the alignment Bauval proposes actually corresponds to the sky at around 2500 BC, which, ironically, aligns perfectly with the accepted archaeological date for the construction of Khufu's pyramid.
And this ties into the associated Sphinx controversy.
Yes, which also attempts to push this timeline back to 10,500 BC. Hancock supports geologist Robert Schuck's fringe theory that the Great Sphinx was carved over 11,500 years ago.
And this is based on the erosion patterns.
It's based on Schuck's claim that the vertical erosion patterns on the Sphinx enclosure were caused by heavy, long-term rainfall. This would necessitate dating the monument to a period when the Egyptian climate was much wetter, long before dynastic Egypt.
Which directly contradicts the Egyptological dating, which links the Sphinx to Pharaoh Khafre around 2520 BC.
Precisely. And while Schuck's geological evidence has been subject to intense scrutiny and is widely disputed by hydrologists and geologists who attribute the erosion to groundwater or surface runoff, It remains a cornerstone of the lost civilization narrative.
So it's an argument that a sophisticated people existed and built this immense structure millennia before conventional history recognizes the start of Egyptian civilization.
That's the claim.
Okay, let's turn our focus entirely toward the established ancient Egyptians. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, built around 2500 BC, remains the ultimate test of human ingenuity. Before we get into how it was built, we have to try to visualize the scale and perfection as it originally stood.
It's impossible to truly appreciate its original splendor today. We see the rugged core blocks. But originally, the pyramid had an outer layer of 115,000 fine, polished white limestone casing stones.
Wow.
These were fitted together with mortar joints that were often less than a millimeter thick. This gave the pyramid a smooth, reflective, ramp-like appearance, making it shine brightly under the Egyptian sun, not the jagged steps we see now.
And we know this precision was noted even in the early days of modern exploration.
Yes, the anecdote regarding Charles Piazzi Smith, the Astronomer Royal for Scotland, demonstrates this. In 1865, he performed the first largely accurate survey of the Great Pyramid. He was so impressed by the precision of the surviving casing stones that he sought permission to transport one back to the UK, where it reigns today in the National Museum of Scotland. That single stone highlights the astonishing finish and precision achieved by the builders.
For millennia, the use of ramps to move blocks was the primary explanation, an idea dating back to Diodorus of Sicily, who's writing about 300 years after the construction.
That's the classic theory. But we now have compelling physical evidence that validates sophisticated ramp usage during the Old Kingdom. Archaeologists recently discovered a 4,500-year-old ramp system at the Hatnub Quarry, which dates precisely to Khufu's dynasty, the Fourth Dynasty.
That's a huge discovery.
It's crucial because it shows the Egyptians had already mastered force multiplication logistics.
Tell us about the engineering of this specific ramp at Hatnub. How did it differ from just a simple straight slope?
The Hatnub ramp was revolutionary. It wasn't just a simple linear slope. It was flanked by staircases that featured a series of numerous, evenly spaced post holes.
Post holes?
And archaeologists hypothesized that these posts held an ancient, sophisticated system utilizing ropes, wood, and perhaps a proto-pulley system.
So workers weren't just dragging blocks up a slippery slope. They were actively leveraging physics.
Exactly. The design would have allowed workers standing on the side staircases to pull stones upward using the posts for leverage. This setup, using ropes wrapped around the posts, acts as a system of force multiplication. It allows a smaller team to apply significant force against gravity efficiently, reducing the fatigue and manpower needed.
And this kind of system had never been found before.
Never before in the Old Kingdom. It demonstrates that Egyptian builders were constant innovators seeking maximum efficiency.
That discovery gives real-world weight to the theoretical ramp system proposed by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, the internal corkscrewing ramp.
Houdin's inside-out construction theory, which he presented in 2003, is the most highly detailed, plausible, conventional theory for Khufu's construction. Using specialized 3D computer modeling, he argues that the majority of the pyramid was built using a continuous corkscrewing internal ramp that still exists within the pyramid structure.
Walk us through the specifics of this phantom ramp. What are its dimensions and its pathway?
Houdin theorizes the internal ramp would be approximately 6 feet wide, designed with a very manageable incline or grade of about 7%. The pathway would run parallel to the outer face of the pyramid. And the crucial element is that it turns 90 degrees at the corners. Workers would transition the blocks around the corner, where the ramp would continue spiraling upward.
And what immense logistical problem does this internal ramp solve?
It solves the external ramp problem. Building an external straight ramp high enough to reach the capstone 480 feet up would require an incomprehensible amount of material, likely exceeding the volume of the pyramid itself.
Right.
Houdin's theory suggests the external ramp was only used for the construction of the bottom third of the pyramid. Once that base was established, the internal ramp took over, hiding the construction path inside the monument as it grew.
Okay, if that's the case, how dangerous was the transition point from the external scaffolding to the entrance of the internal ramp? Wouldn't that be the weakest link in the construction process?
That's a great engineering challenge. The transitions at the corners are crucial. Houdin suggests these corner zones would have been open galleries or notches, which would have served several functions.
Like what?
They'd act as staging areas, allowing workers to turn the immense sledges 90 degrees, and also providing ventilation. Workers would have been protected on the internal ramp, but the corner stages, perhaps using that proto-pulley system we discussed earlier, would have been high-risk zones.
But this theory has a limitation. the massive blocks for the internal chambers.
This is the critical constraint. The 60-ton monolithic granite and limestone beams used to roof the king's and queen's chambers could not have fit or been managed on the narrow, 6-foot internal ramp.
So how does he solve that?
To address this, Houdin proposes a second, far more massive counterweight system located inside the Grand Gallery. He believes this steeply inclined gallery was used to pull these 60-ton beams straight up the center of the pyramid using counterweights and heavy wooden cranes.
If this ramp exists, what physical evidence supports it?
The theory relies on several compelling physical clues, sometimes called the 34 clues. The most significant is a spiral anomaly detected through microgravimetry, a non-destructive technique.
We need to unpack that technical term. What exactly is microgravimetry and how can it see inside a 4,500-year-old monument?
Microgravimetry is a highly specialized scientific technique that measures minute variations in the gravitational field across a surface. Density affects gravity.
Okay.
So if you walk across the surface of the pyramid with a microgravimeter, the device detects light changes in density beneath your feet. A dense area pulls slightly more, a void or an air pocket pulls slightly less. And the spiral anomaly that was detected corresponds perfectly to the geometry and path of Houdin's proposed internal ramp.
Wow. Any other evidence?
Further supporting evidence comes from the neighboring 5th Dynasty Sun Temple of Abu Ghurab, built about a century later. An actual internal ramp structure was found there, suggesting this was a known, established construction technique in the Old Kingdom.
Which lends credence to the idea that Khufu's builders were doing the same thing.
Precise.
And how close are we to definitively proving or disproving this internal ramp?
Well, researchers, including Houdin and Egyptologist Bob Breyer, are seeking the necessary approvals to conduct further non-destructive surveys. This includes more powerful microgravimetric scans and thermal photography.
Thermal imaging, that's interesting.
Very. If the ramp exists, the air trapped inside those voids should remain cooler than the surrounding sun-baked stone, creating detectable thermal signatures. Success here would not rely on aliens or lost civilizations, but on complex, measurable human engineering.
Moving from the geometry of the ramps, let's pivot to the material itself. We're going to discuss a radical, still human-centric theory that challenges the assumption that the millions of blocks were conventionally quarried. I'm referring to the limestone concrete hypothesis.
This is the controversial work of French materials scientist Joseph Davidovits. His theory states that the Great Pyramid blocks, or at least the high-quality casing stones and those used for the upper third, are not carved stone at all.
Not carved.
But rather a form of limestone concrete or man-made stone. They weren't lifted, they were cast in situ.
That implies the ancient Egyptians were masters of material science we don't often credit them with. How exactly would they have manufactured this ancient concrete?
Davidovits' model suggests a sophisticated chemical process involving readily available materials. First, soft limestone, particularly that with a high content of the clay mineral kaolinite, was dissolved into a watery slurry using Nile River water.
Okay.
This slurry was then mixed with lime, which could be sourced from wood ash, and natron, a naturally occurring salt already extensively used in the mummification process.
What role does the natron play chemically in creating this artificial stone?
Natron acts as a powerful base and desiccant. It initiates the geopolymerization process. When mixed with the dissolved kaolinite and lime, the mixture chemically reacts and rapidly solidifies.
So it's basically a chemical hardening agent.
Exactly. The workers would transport this wet, clay-like concrete to the construction site, pack it into reusable wooden molds right atop the previous layer, and allow it to cure chemically over a few days. The result is a rock-hard, synthetic stone, cast with impossible precision.
So the famous precision of the pyramid blocks wasn't due to flawless quarrying and cutting, but flawless molding. Does material science confirm this casting process?
There is some evidence that supports it. Michel Barsoum, a material science researcher at Drexel University, published findings in 2006 using scanning electron microscopy on pyramid samples. He claimed to have found mineral compounds, specifically calcium and silicon compounds, and microscopic air bubbles that do not occur in naturally quarried limestone.
And the air bubbles are the key.
The key here is the shape of the air bubbles. Air pockets trapped in synthetic concrete, according to Barsoum, look different from the natural voids found in sedimentary rock. This analysis led him to conclude that a synthetic geopolymer material was indeed used. Davidovits further argues that some hieroglyphic texts, like those on the famine stele, actually contain recipes that describe the technology of stone agglomeration.
However, this hypothesis is not universally accepted. In fact, it has fierce opponents who stick to the conventional quarrying model.
Oh, that's the nature of scientific debate. Petrographers experts in the composition of rocks remain deeply skeptical. Dipayangana, after reviewing Davidovits and Barsoom's work, concluded that there was no conclusive evidence for a synthetic material, and that a petrographic analysis strongly points to natural limestone. He stated that we are far from accepting, even as a remote possibility, a man-made origin of pyramid stones.
So it's a debate between chemistry and geology.
Essentially, yes. It boils down to whether the anomalies found in the samples are the result of poor quality control in the casting process, or simply natural variations in decay in a quarried stone.
If they solved the horizontal movement problem with ramps and possibly solved the material problem with concrete, how did they solve the vertical lifting problem before the pulley was common? Let's shift focus now to an entirely different high-tech solution: hydraulics. And for this, we move to the slightly older Djoser Step Pyramid, built around 2680 BCE.
This is truly a radical theory, suggesting the ancient builders used advanced civil engineering and hydraulic power, the power of water, to lift massive stone blocks. This turns water from a simple resource into a sophisticated construction tool.
Given that Egypt is largely an arid environment, how could water power have been harnessed for such a heavy-duty task?
Well, the theory is based on computer modeling and analysis of historical climate data, suggesting heavier periodic rainfall during the Old Kingdom. The system centers on a huge, poorly understood structure near Djoser's complex called Gizr El Mudir.
Gizr El Mudir.
It's a massive enclosure wall, described back in the 1700s, hundreds of meters long.
So the enclosure was essentially a massive catchment system.
Exactly. Researchers propose that Gizr El Mudir was built to capture floodwater during periods of intense rain flowing through desert channels. This captured water was then directed into a large engineered basin just west of Djoser's burial grounds.
Turning the area into a temporary lake.
A temporary lake during the construction periods. The water would then drain into the complex's huge, encircling limestone trench.
Now, walk us through this. If I'm a worker, how does filling a pool of water actually help me lift a 5-ton block? Where does the water-powered elevator come in?
The theory suggests a sophisticated hydraulic system involving a float and lift platform situated inside a vertical shaft within the complex.
A float and lift.
As the water level in the trench or basin rose or fell, the float and the attached lift platform would counterbalance each other. By managing the flow of water into or out of the shaft, essentially a simple log system, the builders could efficiently leverage the power of buoyancy to loft heavy blocks and workers up to multiple heights within the structure. It leverages an immense amount of natural energy, the weight and buoyancy of the water, to resolve the logistical problem of vertical movement without relying on thousands of men dragging ropes. It showcases a highly advanced level of civil engineering, using the landscape and climate fluctuations as part of the construction plan.
It moves the technology far beyond simple rollers and sledges.
Beyond.
We've explored ramp logistics, internal corkscrews, geopolymer chemistry, and even water-powered elevators. Now, let's look at a few intriguing artifacts and powerful speculative theories that suggest forgotten mechanical technologies were at play. Let's start with a discovery that predates most of the engineering discussions: the proto-pulley.
This discovery comes from the 1930s excavations by Egyptologist Salim Hassan at the pyramid city of Queen Kentkos near Giza. Hassan unearthed a distinct basalt artifact. It was shaped like a thick stone wheel segment, featuring a hole running through its center and 3 clearly defined grooves on one edge. Hassan concluded this was an Old Kingdom proto-pulley.
Why is this artifact so crucial, given that conventional Egyptology generally believed true pulleys weren't invented until the Greek or Roman periods?
Before this find, the standard view is that lifting relied solely on basic wooden rollers, sledges, and ramps. Pure brute force. Hassan's find suggests a functional technological piece of equipment existed much earlier.
And it was made of basalt.
Crucially, yes. Basalt is an incredibly hard, dense volcanic stone. This indicates it was specifically engineered to withstand immense stress and friction, exactly what you would need for a device handling heavy loads and ropes. It signifies a mechanical understanding far beyond simple dragging.
How might this proto-pulley have been incorporated into the large-scale projects at Giza?
Well, the speculation is extensive and links back to our previous sections. It could have been the missing mechanical piece needed for that Hatnub quarry ramp system, allowing workers to efficiently guide ropes for force multiplication around wooden posts. It could also have been essential for the wooden contraptions Houdin proposes for the Grand Gallery counterweight system, helping manage the thick ropes used to hoist those 60-ton beams.
And for digging, maybe.
Furthermore, consider deep excavation. Sites like Campbell's Tomb have shafts that are 72 feet deep. A strong basalt proto-pulley could have been used on a fixed wooden frame above the shaft to guide ropes attached to containers, allowing debris to be pulled up laterally by teams of workers standing on level ground. It makes deep excavation dramatically simpler.
It implies a mechanical advantage was available in the 4th dynasty.
The significant one.
Let's turn now to a mystery that Herodotus claimed was grander than the pyramids themselves. The Egyptian labyrinth of Hawara. We often hear about the pyramids, but this structure remains an enigma of astonishing proportions.
It is the stuff of historical legend, and the sheer scale is why we must take it seriously. This structure is near the pyramid of Amenemhat III at Hawara. Ancient historians provided accounts that are almost unbelievable in their scope. Herodotus, writing around 450 BC, visited the labyrinth and stated unequivocally that it exceeds the pyramids in grandeur and is beyond the power of words to describe.
Exceeds the pyramids in grandeur. What specific architectural details did he describe that lead to that conclusion?
Herodotus detailed a structure containing 12 covered courts and a staggering 3,000 chambers, 1,500 above ground and 1,500 below ground.
3,000 chambers.
He noted the meticulous construction. The massive roof was made of stone, and the walls were covered with carved figures. He emphasized the sheer number of courts surrounded by white stone pillars fitted together most perfectly.
And other historians back this up.
Strabo, another ancient historian, reinforced this awe-inspiring account. He described chambers with monolithic beams of outstanding size spanning the ceilings. He was so impressed by the material quality that he explicitly noted that nowhere is wood or any other material included. The precision, the materials, and the monolithic nature of the construction point to the most demanding megalithic style of the Old Kingdom.
So this isn't just hyperbole from an ancient traveler. Has modern technology confirmed the existence of a structure matching these accounts?
It has. The sources confirm that modern non-invasive technology has been extensively used to scan the Hawara location. This includes satellite-based deep earth penetrating radar, Doppler tomography, and advanced seismic data, similar to the techniques used in the Scan Pyramids project at Giza.
And the results?
These scans have repeatedly definitively confirmed the existence of a massive, regular, and deep underground structure at Hawara. The dimensions and the scope detected by the radar directly match the incredible ancient accounts.
But it hasn't been excavated.
Despite the confirmation of a massive 3,000-chamber structure that ancient historians said was the greatest ever built, it has yet to be fully explored or excavated.
The fact that we have confirmation of a colossal, legendary structure and we haven't dug it up is perhaps the greatest modern mystery surrounding ancient Egypt.
It truly is. It raises profound questions about the established priorities and maybe the fear of what might be discovered.
Finally, let's wrap up by returning to the truly non-conventional, moving past even the proto-pulley and hydraulics. Let's talk about acoustic levitation. The idea that sound could be used to move stones, particularly the impossibly heavy ones like the 1,000-ton blocks at Baalbek.
This radical theory provides an appealing alternative when conventional lifting mechanics seem to break down due to material limits. The idea is that ancient cultures may have mastered levitation through sound, using acoustic resonance created by instruments, specific sonic chambers, or chanting to counteract gravity on immense masses.
To many, this sounds firmly like pure science fiction. But modern physics does achieve acoustic levitation, albeit on a microscale. How does it work physically?
Current acoustic levitation uses a high-frequency sound source, a transducer, and a reflector positioned precisely above it. The distance between the transducer and the reflector must be a multiple of exactly half the wavelength of the sound being emitted.
Okay.
When this standing wave is created, it forms nodes, points of minimum sound pressure, where an object can be trapped. The force of the sound pressure counteracts gravity.
So the theory is that ancient builders understood this on a monumental scale.
The theory applied to ancient sites suggests just that. Perhaps using specific stone instruments or resonant chambers, and this is often linked to the apocryphal story of Tibetan monks in 1939 who allegedly used specific drums and horns played in unison to move large stones. It requires a form of extremely focused, high-amplitude sound engineering.
And the reason this speculation persists is tied directly back to the material constraints of conventional methods we discussed earlier.
That's the persistent driver for alternative theorists. The logistical nightmare of the Great Pyramid is cited here. The amount of material required to construct external ramps steep enough to reach the top using conventional methods would be more than the material in the actual pyramids.
An impossible amount of material.
Faced with this overwhelming logistical barrier, theorists seek elegant, non-material intensive solutions, whether it's ancient concrete, water power, or focused sound, that rely on leveraging physics rather than overwhelming human labor. The debate is a fascinating proxy war between brute force logistics and forgotten engineering genius.
We've examined the claims of ancient chariots, the engineering constraints of the Orion correlation, the highly detailed theories of concrete pyramids, internal corkscrews, the mechanical advantage offered by the proto-pulley, and the astounding possibility of hydraulic systems at Djoser. It is clear that whether you choose to accept the conventional narratives or the alternative ones, the sheer scale of ambition and problem-solving in the ancient world is just staggering.
Indeed. What these deep dives show is that the real tension and excitement often lies in how close modern engineering is coming to confirming or debunking these claims, using 3D modeling, satellite scans, microgravimetry, and thermal imaging to literally peer inside monuments built millennia ago.
And the same tech is being used for both.
The technology that confirmed the existence of the massive labyrinth is the same technology trying to locate the hidden ramps inside Khufu's pyramid.
So what does this all mean? The fact that we have multiple highly detailed yet still disputed theories for how the pyramids were built, from the ingenious simplicity of an internal ramp to the use of ancient concrete, it proves that the ancient Egyptians were masters of problem-solving and highly sophisticated logistics. We are still playing catch-up to their comprehensive understanding of civil engineering and material science.
And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. If the technology to definitively explore the legendary Egyptian labyrinth at Hawara is available right now, and the structure is confirmed to exist and was described by Herodotus as exceeding the grandeur of the pyramids, what fear, what established dogma, or what hesitation is preventing the immediate excavation of what many ancient historians considered the greatest structure on Earth?
What hidden knowledge might be waiting?
And why are we so hesitant to uncover it?
A truly provocative thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the limits of ancient achievement. We hope this knowledge sticks with you.